This film interested me because of the dynamic between two brothers who are very different but share a similar bond in Billy and Whitey Bulger, and a childhood friend who grew up in the same neighborhood, South Boston, known as Southie, who allowed Whitey Bulger to run amok in a city because he had always admired Whitey, always in a sense wanted to be Whitey, and wanted to be in Whitey's good graces ever since Whitey, and this is John Connolly that I'm speaking of, the special agent in charge of the FBI, ever since Whitey Bulger saved John Connolly from a playground fight. So he's always revered this man. This dynamic, this unholy alliance among these three men that was so fascinating, and a crime story that I felt we as Americans or as viewers hadn't quite seen. He understands that if he does, and if he's working alongside, as he thinks, the enemy, which is the FBI, then he'll be able to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, in the city of Boston, and that he will be able to take over the Italian mafia, Gennaro and Giulio's, his rackets, loan sharking, and ultimately he ascends because of John Connolly and his relationship. Whitey ascends to the top crime figure in the city of Boston. And the FBI were very wary about allowing John Connolly and Whitey Bulger to become partners. Very early on, they felt that this was going to be a recipe for disaster, and ultimately that bore out to be the truth. Because John Connolly and the FBI allowed Whitey Bulger, who was their top echelon informant, to run roughshod over the city and to essentially commit murder when he wanted to and as often as he did, to deal drugs into the community. He introduced drugs into South Boston as early and as often as he did, or even taking over all of the racketeering and loan sharking for the city. Whitey was a man that really had unfettered access to the FBI and to all levels of crime in the city. And this is a guy who was extremely, extremely cunning and very, very smart, and a man who, when given that type of latitude, ran with it. And he was a man without conscience, quite frankly. And you're talking about a man without conscience who is extremely bright, who has the ability to do whatever he wants and whenever he wants in the city of Boston. That's a recipe for disaster, and ultimately the consequences were it was the biggest scandal in the history of the FBI. What Johnny and I wanted to do was to show this man in a full-bodied portrait, to show him as flawed as he is, as maniacal and vicious as he is, but also as human as he is. And there's a danger in that because so many people might say, wow, you're really humanizing this man who personifies evil. And we certainly showed all levels of his viciousness and his evil, but we also showed Whitey as a human. When I decided to write and direct this, and I'm a fan of the genre for sure, but I felt that the story was a story of criminals who happen to be humans, but I wanted to show humans who also happen to be criminals. I wanted to get a performer who had never given a performance like this in Johnny Depp and have him go to those lengths, and he went to those lengths and farther because he wanted the truth of who Whitey Bulger ultimately was. And he did such an expert and authentic job that Whitey Bulger's attorney, longtime attorney, stopped by the set on 2 occasions and said that it was chilling watching Johnny give this performance. The way Johnny moves, the way Johnny talks, the timbre of his voice, the accent, his ability to fully inhabit a sociopath that is Whitey Bulger. I chose to shoot it there because it couldn't be shot anywhere else. My first 2 films were shot in the towns and states that I wrote them for, one in New Mexico and my last picture in the steel country of Pennsylvania. And for me, location in a city is as important as the lead character, because it is a character for me, and it allows the audience to really understand a certain place and time. And Boston is a very distinct city, has a great deal of ethnic neighborhoods that I wanted to explore, different architecture types, different light than I had shot in New Mexico and in the mountains of Pennsylvania. And it was such a strong character that I couldn't foresee shooting this anywhere but Boston. And the city of Boston and the denizens of Boston were absolutely fantastic. They opened their arms to us. They were very generous. I shot and scouted in every corner of Boston, and I hope that those Bostonians are proud of that.